A couple of weeks ago in the mail, I received this, the Negative Supply Essential 35mm Film Scanning Kit. This kit was sent to me courtesy of Freestyle Photo, a camera store located in California that carries a wide selection of film, chemicals, darkroom supplies, and cameras. They're also a retail partner with Negative Supply, who produce a range of products for camera scanning your film. But what is camera scanning is a question that probably nobody watching this video is really asking, because it's a pretty popular thing in the film world as an alternative to having a lab scan your film so that you can go from this to this to this. Exciting. I've talked about camera scanning before in some older videos, but it's been a few years, and I'm set up to do it a bit better now. Also, I'm older and wiser to an extent. Camera scanning is the term that we've adopted in the film world for rephotographing your film, either negatives or slides, using a digital camera paired with a macro lens. This is different from a photo lab that likely uses a dedicated lab scanner such as a Noritsu or Fuji machine. And a big part of what's needed for camera scanning effectively is a film carrier that allows you to keep the actual film nice and flat over a light source to photograph with your digital camera. And that's where Negative Supply, as well as a variety of other options, come into play. And I'll touch on some different options as well briefly. This essential kit is exactly what it sounds like. Just the essentials that you need to get into home scanning in this way. Well, except for a digital camera and macro lens. You have to supply those yourself. So let's see what's in the box. Okay, we've got instructions for getting started, the basic 35mm film carrier Mark II, a small copy stand, specifically named the Basic Riser Mini Mark II, an adapter for putting the film carrier on the light source, full frame, half frame, and panoramic masks for the carrier, the light source 35, which is a LED panel with a color rendering index of 97, and the bottom platform for the copy stand. This is pretty much all you need for an easy little scanning setup for just 35mm film, again minus the camera part of the camera scanning. The film carrier is small but very effective. The film threads through it in like a little S-shaped path that keeps it very flat. This basic carrier is a sturdy piece of plastic. The higher end Negative Supply products are CNC milled aluminum, but of course come with a much higher price tag. At the bottom is where you can slide in one of the masks based on the frame you're capturing. Half frame, full frame, and panoramic masks are included. This extra piece will sit between the light source 35 and the carrier so that they can slot together neatly, but the carrier does also have rubber feet on it to hold it in place if you're using, say, a different light source or surface. The light source 35 has a USB plug with an on-off button and is nice and bright. The CRI of a light source is a big selling point for buying camera scanning accessories. CRI stands for Color Rendering Index, which is how accurate the light renders colors. A higher CRI is a higher quality and more accurate light source. The light source in this kit has a CRI of 97. You can also get more expensive ones rated at 99. You put your carrier on the light source, thread some film into one side, and pull it through to advance. It's really important to be using some gloves in this process because the oils of your hands can easily get onto the film, leading to fingerprints and smudges and possibly damaging it. The basic holder by default just comes with the standard cassette inside the carrier, and you can remove this with these two screws on top. This can be changed out for a full border scan cassette, which lets you capture to the edge of the film so that you can get, the sprockets and like the film borders if you really want that. And the little copy stand is quick to set up and easy to adjust the height of when mounting a camera. Okay, I'm gonna re-photograph some film. Camera scanning is a big topic because everyone has different workflows and preferences for how they like their images to look. So my focus in this video is on the essential Negative Supply kit. I'll also compare it against the Valoi system and the essential film holder and talk post-processing a little bit as well, but I'm not doing a whole Negative Lab Pro color editing tutorial for this stuff. When I camera scan, I use the Lumix GH5 Micro Four Thirds digital camera. I've paired it with an older Canon FD 50mm macro lens, which works fine for this camera scanning setup. You do not need a full frame mirrorless digital camera. You can probably get by with an older APS-C camera, and this is, again, in my setup, by no means a new macro lens either. I'm just using a vintage one, but I'm usually happy with my results here. Besides the camera, I've got the copy stand, gloves, a microfiber cloth, a blower, and of course the film carrier and light source. First, I want to make sure everything is level, and for that I just use a mirror. This mirror is specifically from Valoi, but any glass would do. For doing this, you focus on your camera and you want the middle of the lens to be in the middle of the frame. That way, the camera is directly above the film carrier. I'm just quickly going to put a folded piece of paper under the carrier here to help me level it. On the base of the stand, I have the light source and the film carrier, which sits neatly on top, again, just using that small adapter. So normally I would do this in a dimmer environment or use like a hood accessory on the carrier, but even with this much light pollution, I'm still having fine results, as I'll show. But yes, I know you should be eliminating excess light when doing this, at least like not have lights shining directly on it, but I needed to do it for this video so you can see what the hell is going on. I've also paired my Lumix to my laptop so that I can take the picture without touching the camera. And then I'm ready to go. I've got an uncut roll of old slide film and some black and white film, as well as some color negative film cut into strips that I'm going to scan with this setup. The negative supply basic 35 carrier is good. It does exactly what it should do, which is keep the film flat and allow me to move it without too much hassle. The design is good, the film moves nice and smoothly through it. It does exactly what it needs to do. This essential kit is great overall. It's priced at $250 American, which is good especially for what it includes, and I didn't find myself missing anything integral at all for using this stuff. It's nice and compact, it takes up such a small footprint on a desk, so it's easy to leave set up, or at least be quick to pull out and use for digitizing some film. The little copy stand is sturdy for like medium-sized cameras, and I had no problems with the Lumix on it. I will say I don't love how it threads onto the camera though. It uses a hex key, which conveniently sits in the top of the stand and goes in at the side to tighten the screw. Sometimes it's just like a little bit stiff and it feels like maybe it's skipping a little bit when I'm trying to tighten it. It's just not my favorite. The basic 35 carrier and the light source don't have adjustable feet on them or anything to help you level them either. So you'll have to wedge a little something under them if you need to adjust them slightly. Hence the folded paper I used. The carrier also isn't great for short strips of 2 to 3 frames of 35mm. I did one and just kind of had to pick it up and move it through while wearing gloves. Not a big deal at all, but those short strips can be a little tricky to work with. It was fine for longer 5-frame strips though. The basic setup also lacks any brush accessory at all. Dust and hair or whatever happens so easily with camera scanning, and even a little brush goes a long way. I always use a cloth to at least wipe down the film before scanning to try to just eliminate some of what's on the film. Lab scanners use infrared scanning on color film to detect and remove small artifacts, but that doesn't exist for camera scanning, so you just have to try to manage any of that stuff yourself. A brush accessory isn't integral, but it can help, and it does exist for some of the higher end Negative Supply products only. The Pro carrier from Negative Supply also has a roller assembly, so you can advance the film using the knob. The basic carrier requires you to just pull it through, which at times isn't the most precise way to do it for really lining up those frames, but again, not the end of the world. Negative Supply makes a wide variety of options for camera scanning, and it all seems to be really well manufactured, but I will say that it's at times just a bit overwhelming to go through what they have. Different film carrier options, copy stands, accessories for connecting certain carriers with certain light sources, large format options, I have the Lightsource 35, but if I wanted to use the basic 120 carrier, I would also need to get the Lightsource Mini. You can scan other formats like 110 and APS film using the same 35 carrier, but you buy the separate cassettes to swap them out for the main holder. There are ones for mounted slides. My brain is just shutting down reading some of this on their website.
Brand new 4x5 Lightsource Basic Mark II. Basic film carrier 35 Mark II with its stabilizing mask. The Supreme basic film carrier 120 light adapter plate. Today we're taking a quick look at the basic film carrier 35 Mark II. This is going to work with our basic Riser Mark III. Today we're introducing our basic Riser Mini and panoramic format masks.
But in their defense, they have YouTube videos that detail things well, and you can also book time with someone to help you determine what you need to buy from them. So they're at least aware that there's a lot going on with their product lineup. But this basic carrier and this little kit overall is the perfect entry into this stuff for the negative supply lineup of things. I do want to briefly put it beside the Valoi foam carrier. I've used the Valoi system for a few years now and have bought some more accessories to round things out as well, and I'm overall really happy with using that stuff. With Valoi, you either just use these holders and put them right on a light source, or you can buy the Advancer unit. The Advancer unit lets you swap out the holder plates depending on the format you want and gives you this roller assembly, which is nice, but moving the rubber rollers between formats on this isn't the smoothest. I'm always worried the rubber rollers are gonna split and break. The Advancer unit has adjustable feet to help with leveling it, which is very useful. There's also an additional metal adapter, which you can get for use with the Cinesto light source. The Cinesto light source is good and has some different color temperature options, whereas the negative supply light just has one. The copy stand from Valoi is much bigger compared to the basic riser from Negative Supply. I use it for some overhead video work as well, and I bought it with the additional height piece too, so that adds to the size of it. But overall, it's a much bigger footprint on the desk, so I don't leave this one set up constantly. It also has options for various formats like 110 and 8mm film, and one for 35mm borders. I have hoods for the carriers and a mounted slide holder as well. And a brush accessory can be added to the Advancer at the front. It keeps things just as flat as the Negative Supply basic carrier does, so both are good. Depending on what you buy, the Valoi stuff is pricier in comparison to this kit though. Like the Advancer unit is nearly the price of the essential scanning kit that Freestyle sent me, so this kit is a better deal overall. And I also have this carrier, which is called the Essential Film Holder. This is a fine budget option, but at this point, it's one that I never choose over the Valoi or Negative Supply ones. It has a variety of masks for formats. Right now I have it set up for the full 35mm borders one. It's very light, and without any rubber feet or anything on the bottom to keep it still, it moves around very easily. It takes a bit to unscrew everything and swap out the masks, but you can adjust the spacers for height to make room for a light source underneath it. And it does have a nice diffuser sheet on the bottom. Oh, and I've got this crazy unit from SlideSnap that has electronic advance and the camera is on a rail and it's wild. This is what I go to if I need to do a lot of film, like I could digitize a small archive real easy with this thing. It's also an entirely different price point. The Negative Supply kit has won me over, and I initially wasn't the most interested in having another option on hand for camera scanning. I do still like the Valoi stuff a lot, but really the big appeal for me with this is how compact it all is. It's super quick to kind of just get out or leave set up somewhere and just go through a roll quickly. It is most appealing if you have film that isn't cut up into strips, and I think that applies to all camera scanning stuff at all, because that way you can just thread it through once and advance it along and capture it. Now, with film digitized or camera scanned or whatever, there's of course a good amount of editing required to go from this to this. I use Negative Lab Pro, which is maybe the most popular solution. It's a plugin for Adobe Lightroom, which offers a ton of control for inverting and handling color. It's also $100 American, so add that on top of everything else. There are ways of doing this editing and inverting yourself in like Photoshop manually, but it takes some time and work to get it right. There's also Analog Toolbox for Capture One, which is free, and I've only ever used it briefly. And there's SmartConvert, which just launched from Filmomat. I've tried the demo of that, and I like it. It's standalone, more bare bones than Negative Lab Pro. It's like $10 more than Negative Lab Pro, but there's also a really handy like auto crop feature that seems to be pretty good most of the time. There's probably more programs out there as well that I just don't know about. So, you know, let me know down below how you're scanning film and editing film and doing all this stuff if you do it at home yourself. There's also alternatives to buying any of the things that I mentioned in this video. It's, of course, a very widespread community around doing this sorts of stuff. So there are lots of DIY options. People have built their own carriers, or if you have the ability to 3D print or know somebody who can 3D print. I was just looking at the website cameracraft.com, and that has some really nice looking 3D printable files that you can buy, and then you make them yourself. But obviously that is just kind of a different approach to it, and not necessarily for everyone either. Lomography has the Digital Liza unit, which I don't know much about and have never used, but it's worth knowing that other options do exist, outside of things like Negative Supply and Valoi, like the bigger ones that maybe you see advertised the most. Is camera scanning better than a lab scan? I'm not getting sucked into that debate. It depends. It depends on what lab you use. It depends who is working the scanner at the lab that day and making the adjustments. Depends on what camera and lens you're using for your setup, and like how much light is in your room when you're doing it. What kind of mood you're in that day. And yeah, even the film holder and like the programs that you're using. Do we think camera scanning is a little bit silly? A little bit. Everything is a little bit silly. It's a little silly when you explain it to people outside of the hobby. And even people within the film world, there are, of course, people who don't like it. But hey, it's just kind of the evolution of like rephotographing slides with accessories like these from decades ago. I will admit that describing film carrier products like these to people who don't use film is one of the odder niche things to tell people about. It keeps it flat. It keeps the film flat. It's really useful. But if you're shopping around, and especially starting from scratch with looking for ways to digitize your film, the essential basic, the essential kit for 35mm film scanning from Negative Supply, available through Freestyle Photo, is genuinely a good point for beginning, and is maybe just all you'll ever need, depending on what you're shooting and what you want out of your film. Thank you so much for checking this out. There's links in the description down below. I have a Freestyle Photo affiliate link, so there's a little bit that comes to me if you buy stuff from Freestyle through that link. You can check that out. There's also links in the description for some merch for Analog Resurgence, the Patreon. There's some recent stuff in the mail that showed up that I want to show off. Flick Film, who is based here in Canada, and you might have seen a lot of his stuff even in the States, outside of North America even. This is a little C41 8-roll developing kit, and it is made with 53% less chemicals, so it is a little friendlier to work with. I'm gonna use this at some point. I just don't have 8 rows of color shot that need developing just yet. I also just got a film and a letter from Jeremy, who says, "Hey Noah, been a fan for a long time. I recently started a film company modifying Lomo purple to look closer to aerochrome. I would shoot it at 100 ISO and in direct sunlight. It doesn't work in the shade." He sent along this film, and it's also, he sells it through an Etsy shop at Modified Film. I haven't shot this yet, C41 process. I don't know what he does to it. I think there's some samples on there, of course, about what it looks like, but that is very cool. I'm interested to see how that kind of turns out, because I got to shoot some, not technically aerochrome, but Kodak infrared stuff a few years ago. It's incredible. There really is nothing quite like it. I'm interested in this. Unfortunately, Jeremy, you hit me. at like the worst time of the year here to shoot a film like this, because it's in late November now, early December now. So it is like gray and cloudy like all the time, and will be until like March. So I'm gonna hold on to this, maybe try to get to it if there's like a good chance in the next little while, but it might be a little bit. Thank you so much for everybody who continues to watch this stuff and support the videos and everything. It's still amazing to see just the community and like how much film has grown, because as I've said, I've been doing this for like 5 years now, and it's just different from when I started like years ago. There's way more just like, you know, hobbyist and like enthusiastic YouTube channels about, you know, people just exploring and having fun with this stuff. And there's also just like new developments in the film world. Harman, parent company of Ilford, is putting out Phoenix. I don't know a lot about that because when I'm making this video today, I'm recording it December 1st. They're unveiling that film like this afternoon. Orwo put out new color stuff, for better or for worse. A little wonky, but it's out there. That's interesting. Polaroid put out a brand new camera this year that has taken the instant photo community by storm, more or less. Some people really, really like it. Looks cool. And that's about it in terms of like big news this year. Oh yeah, and after 8 years, Kodak announced the Super 8 camera.